Welcome back. As the only Democrat elected statewide in Florida, Nikki Fried is the new face of the party, a clear break from the era of Bill Nelson. We talked about how she will deal with that new role, as well as some of the issues she'll face when she gets into office, including water quality and a move by the South Florida Water Management District that could hamper efforts to stem blue-green algae discharges. But first, the battle brewing with the National Rifle Association. All right, Nikki, so I want to start with one area in particular. You're barely elected, you know, after the recount, and already you're in a fight now, it seems, with Marion Hammer and the NRA. What's going on there?
Yeah, you know, I guess she was not happy that I, challenged her during the election, and so she's put out a proposal to put the concealed weapons permitting under the CFO's office. The
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes.
Take it away from your office.
Correct.
Now, I know that during the campaign you talked about that it may make sense to remove it from your office, but to put it under the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, let them handle everything from background checks to concealed weapons, which would make sense. Why do you think that she wants to turn it over to the CFO as opposed to giving it to FDLE?
Yeah, I think what happened is that she showed her hand, that this is a political decision and that she wants to make sure it stays into hands of individuals that she can have persuasion over. And I've said throughout the entire campaign, the first and foremost, because even if it gets done and it gets moved to a different area in the government, that it's still my responsibility until that happens. And which means that on day one, which has been my priority, to do a comprehensive review of what went wrong, things that we could do to fix it. I've already been speaking to people inside of the department and seeing to make sure that we are putting the safety of our Floridians first. And then as we start doing that and coming up with new policies and new ways to fix this, is also then start having these conversations, talk to law enforcement, how would they do it differently and do it better, and take politics out of this. This is not a political issue. This is it making sure that safety comes first, and that just hasn't been done.
Well, one of the things that we came to light during this entire process was that when concealed weapon permits were denied, it was not unusual for the NRA to send emails to those people, underlings within the Ag Commissioner's office, to yell at them essentially and demand that they actually approve the permits for these following individuals.
Yeah, that's absolutely inappropriate. That when somebody gets denied, there's a reason for it. And to have somebody to have influence to be able to come in there and to change a decision of that nature puts the lives and safety of our Floridians at risk. So which is why I've been talking about making sure there's safeguards in place if it stays in the Department of Agriculture. But more importantly, if it moves over to law enforcement, that type of communication can't happen.
Right. You weren't going to allow that to happen in your office.
Oh, of course not.
FDLE wouldn't allow it to happen.
Absolutely.
So are we just, what we're basically seeing is politician shopping? She's trying to take this area, which is very important to her and the NRA, and move it into a political realm where she thinks she can still exert control.
Absolutely. It's the same thing as attorneys go forum shopping, and when you are doc shopping, that's exactly what she's doing.
The irony, of course, is that you actually haven't been a real strident, anti-NRA person. You have a concealed weapons permit. You've talked about that before. You haven't taken a position really strong one way or the other on a ban of assault weapons. So talk a little bit about what is your view on the Second Amendment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I'm an attorney, and so I'm sworn to protect the Constitution. I do have a gun. I have a concealed weapons permit. I've had it for about 5 years, so it wasn't something I just did for the election. And so I'm, and I believe I've been to shooting ranges because I believe in safety and to learning how to this. So I've been just very supportive of making sure that I'm doing my job, and that's doing it in an efficient and effective manner, not taking anybody's concealed weapons, not precluding people from applying or making it a longer period of time, just making sure that the office is actually run efficiently, and that a lot of it's human error, and making sure that we're getting the right type of people to actually oversee this. As part of my already investigation into the department, a majority of the people that were overseeing this were part-time employees, and so that would be first and foremost, is to make sure that we have full-time employees who are actually overseeing this process. That should be a no-brainer day one.
I want to turn now to the South Florida Water Management District. 2 days after the election, without a lot of fanfare or attention, the South Florida Water Management District extended the Florida Crystals lease on state-owned land that is now earmarked for the reservoir to be built south of the lake to help clean some of those discharges so we don't see the algae, blue-green algae mess that we've had on both coasts in the last few years. without commenting on whether or not you think the extension is a good idea, what's your thought as to the fact that they posted this new lease agreement at 9 p.m. on Wednesday and voted in favor of it on Thursday with very little public comment?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's wrong with government, is that when you don't do things that are transparent and giving people on both sides, I mean, we all know this is a very sensitive issue across our state, and has been heightened through the election process. So it is important for those who are in elected office, you have a responsibility to the public. And if you're not giving people that are on both sides of the debate an opportunity to have their time, you're doing a disservice. And so I think that first and foremost, transparency has got to be part of it. We live in the Sunshine State. We have sunshine laws, and there's a reason why certain rules and procedures are supposed to be put into place to make sure that things are transparent, that the right rules are followed, and that people have an opportunity to debate issues that are so important.
Did they make a mistake here doing it this way?
I do believe that they made sure that it didn't look kosher. And that's by pushing this through, by not giving people an opportunity to have their say in the situation. And there was no need to. From what I've been told, the lease wasn't expiring until March, so there was certainly plenty of time that they could have used to actually have a good debate on this.
Do you have confidence in the South Florida Water Management District at this point?
You know, I definitely have heard lots of rumblings. I haven't had any interaction with them personally, but I've definitely on the campaign trail, was definitely a lot of concerns that were raised and things that were definitely brought to my attention.
All right. I want to talk a little bit broader. As the only statewide elected Democrat, you are essentially now the party's leader. Is that a role that you want to take on?
I actually take that role very seriously. It's something I've been involved in public service my entire life, and so while I did not run for this position to take on and to be the de facto leader of the party, I take it very seriously that there's a lot of good public policy that needs to be put in place, checks and balances with the Republican Party, and also having the deep conversations with my own party saying, what is our message? What did we do right this campaign cycle? What did we do wrong? How do we make sure that we are utilizing the great talent throughout the entire state to have a message that's going to resonate not just with Democrats, but with independent and moderate Republicans, and really have a new face for the party?
Well, talk about a new face. I mean, traditionally, the leadership of the Florida Party has been old white men from Central Florida. You're a 40-year-old Jewish woman from South Florida, you know, who has a number of views that don't necessarily fit with the old guard's way of doing things. Are you concerned at all that you will try that the old guard will try to push you to the side or not take you seriously? And how are you going to deal with that?
Not at all. I've had an opportunity to, as I went through the campaign cycle, got to meet and spend a lot of time with our leadership from years old, and I really look at them as, you know, leaders of inspiration, of people that have been there. And they actually have been very frank, saying maybe it's time. We haven't done it right in the last decades. Maybe it's time to give the mantle over to the next generation and give you all a chance to do good things for our state and for our country.
Well, why do you think you were the only Democrat to win statewide?
Well, I think it was a couple of things. I think that most of the issues that I was discussing were nonpartisan. You know, I was talking about medical marijuana, talking about, you know, concealed weapons and the safety behind those, talking about water issues. Those aren't partisan. Those are things that cross party lines. I came to the table saying, while I've been a lifelong Democrat, my father is a diehard Republican, my mom's a diehard Democrat, and I was learned to kind of come into a situation, hear both sides, and make an independent decision. And I think people appreciated my honesty on issues, that I wasn't taking party stances just because that was what I was supposed to do. And that was one, but I also think that coming from South Florida, most South Floridians didn't know that there's even an ag commissioner and that it's an elected position, and why should they care? It's only about agriculture. But I believe that this debate and this conversation that happened in this election cycle allowed South Florida to vote for the Commissioner of Agriculture.
How long have you been a Democrat?
Since I was 17 years old.
17 years old, so you've always been a Democrat.
Yes.
What is it about the Democratic Party that drew you to it?
You know, the reality is that when I was growing up, I was doing things like Habitat for Humanities, I was doing food kitchens, going on to AIDS walks, and the people that I was surrounded by involved in these types of activities in my youth group were Democrats. And so I felt more comfortable that those issues were so important to me and giving back to my community, and felt that the Democratic Party served more of those ideals that I shared. I'm
curious, what role, if any, do you think Andrew Gillum should play going forward in the state?
You know, I think Andrew is an inspirational leader. We saw numbers coming out during this election cycle that we haven't seen in a very long time for a governor's race. He is a tremendous leader. I've known him since college. He was student body president at FAMU. The year before, I was student body president at the University of Florida. So we've gone through a lot of the same trenches together. I think that he has some talent that we will need as we move forward into the next generation.
You have confidence in Terry Rizzo as the chair of the Florida Democratic Party? I
do. I think that some of the things that she's done, she only came in, she's only been in for 10 months, and she was able to bring the party together. We saw some grassroots stuff that we hadn't seen in a very long time, and I look forward to working with Terry and her team as we kind of rebuild the party and figure out what our mission is for the next election cycle. So you envision, obviously, the presidential candidates are going to start visiting. They're probably going to knock on your door. What are you going to tell them? I want to hear from everybody. I know what it's like to have gone through a primary and getting endorsements from some key leaders, but I want to make sure that they've got the same vision. Florida's going to be a tough area for them to take in 2020. So I want to make sure that we are opening up our doors and giving them all the access that they need. And whoever the nominee is, we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that we turn Florida blue in this next election. Have you heard from any of them already? I have. Who? I've heard from a whole bunch of them. Names? We want names. Who's reached out? I've reached out. Mike Bloomberg has reached out. I know that he's been talking about running. Biden has reached out. You talked to the vice president? I haven't talked to him personally, but members of his team have reached out. I obviously saw him a couple of times when he came to visit here. So there's been a few others and members of Terry McAuliffe's team. And I know these are just names that nobody's declared yet, but certainly people that are looking at possible nominations. It's an interesting time to be a Democrat in Florida. You're going to have a big inauguration for you in Tallahassee. The Democrats haven't had any reason to have an inauguration in Tallahassee for decades almost. Yeah, we are super excited. We are looking forward to inauguration and having a party at night and making sure that every Democrat who wants to come to Tallahassee and be part of the conversation has it, because you're right, this is exciting. This really is something for us to rejoice and to unite over. All right. Nikki Fried, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. We'll be right back.